Good afternoon, and welcome to the second annual Coaches and Directors Summit brought to you by EsportsU. I'm Michael Schreck, founder and CEO of Collegiate Sports Management Group, and we have a great 3 days planned for the Coaches and Directors Summit. Coming off an amazing event in Arlington in May, where all the institutions that participated had a wonderful experience leading in to this coming academic fiscal, where we're about to kick off gameplay in the next month. These next 3 days are going to be filled with panels from coaches, directors, key industry executives, and other people in the esports business. They're going to talk about sponsorship, media, and ways to grow your programs. We are extremely enthusiastic and excited about the upcoming season, and we look forward to seeing everybody in for CECC 24. Enjoy the next 3 days, and thank you.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome here to the EsportsU Coaches and Directors Summit 2023. My name is Kyle Tando, and joining me for our very first panel of the event are three of some of the smartest people in the room, I think, as it pertains to college esports. But today we are here to talk about sponsorships, program sponsorships, and a bunch of other things. I think the big question that a lot of people want to ask is, as it relates to, of course, the $1 million question in money. So joining me here on the panel, let's just go around the room. And I think the man who needs very little introduction, but we'll have you start anyways. Dan, why don't you kick us off here just to say, who you are, where you come from, and just go with that.
I'm Daniel Clark. I was a professional GM and team owner prior to my collegiate life. I'm now the director of esports at Maryville. I am a board member with Voice, and I'm also on the board for NACE Star League.
Nice, right on. Thank you, Dan. And then moving on, let's go down to you, Jesse.
Hey, I am Jesse Bedoni. I'm the director of esports at Pace University in New York, and I am also the co-executive director of Voice, also known as Voice of Intercollegiate Esports.
Nice, right on. And then last but certainly not least, Caitlin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Caitlin Tiniente. I currently serve as the Director of Esports at St. Mary's University in San Antonio, Texas. I'm going into my 4th season here at St. Mary's, and I'm just really, really honored to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys all. Thank you all for joining us here on the panel, and thank you guys for taking out the time to discuss with us, as it pertains to sponsorship and some of that. So I think our first question and our first opening one. So as we look at, sponsorships and all of that, a lot of people see it as transaction of either a product or cash. But for you guys, and feel free anybody to jump in here, how do you think about sponsorships, and do you believe it's different potentially from maybe what your peers might look at as it relates to sponsorship?
So for me at Maryville, prior to Maryville, I was at United. When we sold sponsorship, we had millions and millions of followers, millions of people watching our games. So it was easy to sell eyeballs. In collegiate, you're not going to sell products the same way that you would as a pro team. You're not going to be able to take a PC company and then they're going to sponsor your College League of Legends team. And then because you have a College League of Legends team, you're going to have enough people watching it to where they're going to make a big dent in the sales. So we've been doing a lot of kind of soul searching with our sponsorships in the last couple of years. We've kind of altered this value in kind model for a model where we go in with a case study at the beginning. It's free or very cheap. We basically are exploring collegiate esports with whatever group we're talking to. The group usually has some kind of vested interest in the space to begin with when we talk to them. And then we run a case study for a period of time, and then we share the results with them. And it's really more of like we're working together to solve problems mutually, as opposed to, hey, we think that we're the best team in the country, so you should give us this much money. That's how much we think it's worth.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there, and I can't speak to how anybody else really views. I'm not sure what other directors, what their take on it is, and maybe this sounds a bit cliche, but I try to view sponsorships generally not just as transactional, but as a symbiotic relationship where it's about shared values and shared growth and driving mutual benefit. Largely, I think sponsorships and partnerships are an opportunity to align your program's objectives with the aspirations and philanthropic visions of your partners. So I don't know, maybe some see it more strictly or rigidly in terms of just an exchange of cash or product, but generally, and in my experience, I think a more like dialed back, holistic perspective works out better for everybody.
Okay. Um, Actually, then I'll direct this question to Caitlin, but then as it pertains to maybe how your program obtained your main sponsorships, then let's actually then talk about, with when thinking about this, then as Dan and Jesse have kind of posed it as this symbiotic or as this beneficial relationship between institution and sponsor. Caitlin, is there anything that maybe you'd want to talk to us about in terms of how maybe your program obtained your main sponsorship, or did you also work with any external university departments in any way or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what everyone has said so far is pretty on it. But for us, for our title sponsor, which is Spectrum, um, we definitely embraced collaborating with different departments across campus, um, and bringing everyone to the table for a common goal. And not just for a common goal, but also in a way that can align with the university mission, with our athletics goals, and the vision that athletics originally had for the esports program. So when we started talking to Spectrum, we had a lot of interested departments, specifically IT, athletics, our advancement department, communications, facilities, the office of the president. And the initial, I don't want to say hurdle and I don't want to say challenge, but the initial step was getting everybody on the same page, that this is something that we wanted to bring to campus for various reasons, and that Spectrum was the best partner to do it with. When we got to the table with Spectrum, what we found very quickly is that they aligned with our university mission. And more importantly, they aligned with our ideas of investment of time, investments of faith, and investments of believing in what we're trying to achieve here, as well as monetary investments. What we wanted to build was not just a place for students to compete in esports titles, but we wanted to see how does esports operate in a scholastic and athletics space. So with the Spectrum sponsorship, every single year we do a check-in, and it's basically laying out for our sponsor every single way this sponsorship was able to positively affect students. And that can come in a lot of different forms, whether it's the equipment that we use, the space that we use for our student staff, whether it's need-based scholarships for health insurance, any number of things that we were able to positively affect. And it doesn't end there, right? We have to continue working with various departments on campus for really everything related to this, whether it be building out the space with facilities, IT, whether it be the marketing and the press releases that we publish with our communications department, or, and maybe this sounds a little silly a couple of years later, but our virtual unveiling of our sponsor and the arena, we had to come up with a quick solution because it was the first 2 weeks of lockdown. So with the sponsorship, it could not have been accomplished without our partners across campus and their continued support and their continued belief in what we're trying to achieve. And more importantly, how this can benefit students college experience, but also their lives. So I know that's a lot of words, but again, it's not just one person, it's teams of people who were able to bring this idea and this sponsorship to life. And it is still, I mean, I'm in the Spectrum Esports Arena right now, and it's still, we see it every day.
No, I think that's awesome and that's amazing to hear. And I think actually let's expand on that a little bit more. I do want to kind of open that up to either Jesse or Dan to kind of also comment on. But one of the things I think that really stood out or that will stand out, right, is how that sponsorship impacts and affects the quality of life for the students, right? How does it give them things that they otherwise wouldn't have had or anything like that. So, open up to the rest of the floor here. But is there anything that any of you guys would want to speak to about how, some of your sponsorships or, the finding the sponsors or anything is currently actively helping your students, right? Or is there anything that you guys, any examples maybe we can pull from that shows kind of that same mentality or that same mindset?
Up until this point, our sponsorships, because we are a very varsity focused school, have been very focused on like the performance of our top players within our program. We're working towards building a club space on our campus that is open to the general public. But up until this point, any partner that we've talked to with the idea of their product helping the students has been with our competitive teams. So a good example for us is we did an exploratory deal with First Form for the last year. First Form is owned by Supplement Superstore. It's their brand for supplements, protein, all kinds of things. They created a energy drink this past year, and they wanted to explore esports as a target market for that energy drink. We were introduced to them through that conversation, and from there it became a conversation not only about how we can help them kind of penetrate the market with the energy drink, but how can their other products help our students' daily lives? How can we help our students go down the path of becoming healthier individuals and growing as individuals through this partnership? And so for the last year, we've been working with them. They bring us meat sticks, protein bars, energy drinks, supplement rounds, whatever our guys need. They're kind of there for them. We've kind of built a gym culture within our program, so it's kind of complemented nicely. There was also a day leading into our playoff season this past year where our whole program got to go over to their 200,000 square foot compound, and we were put through a team workout by one of their influencer managers. So it's been really nice to like kind of through a exploratory partnership find ways to help impact our students' daily lives and the health when we're talking about a sport where it's very easy to become unhealthy when you're pursuing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, and I think I love that. Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just jump in briefly. And I think so. We've had two key donors, one for each of our campuses. We have one campus, which is in lower Manhattan, sort of right in the heart of the city there, and then one that's an hour north in Westchester. And those initial donors, partners, sponsors, they're kind of all three, really. I mean, when it comes to enhancing our students' experience, specifically those within our esports program, I mean, they were foundational, instrumental, essential to everything we were doing because it was their generosity and their donations that led to the development of both of our esports centers on campus. So directly, their contributions provided access to resources for students, spaces for them to play, to build community, to meet friends, to compete. So hugely and directly impactful would be my response.
No, that's awesome. I think then where I would want the next question then I think we would have on the list here that I want to bring up is looking at then so we've talked about some of the the ways that we've started up right how you guys have kind of built some of your sponsorships or found some of those foundational things. Let's talk a little bit about successful ones. I know, Caitlin, we talked about your initial one, but I think Dan, a big question that a lot of people are going to have is, we've heard about. I think you knew it was gonna come, so I'll bring it up. Right, we've heard about, everyone knows about the McDonald's deal and all of those things, but why don't we go around the room then and let's talk about what are some of the more successful sponsorships and what did kind of expectations look like coming into it, and then how have you guys either met or more likely than not exceeded expectations with some of those original kind of asks, right, as the sponsorship was formed.
Yeah, so there's two types of deliverables I look at when I look at sponsorships. There's the how it delivers internally to our campus, and then there's how we deliver to the sponsor. Um, there's two different forms of success there. So one of the forms of internal success that we're talking about is I would use our Under Armour deal as an example. Through esports, we were able to get through to Under Armour corporate based on our reputation, and we were able to reach a cash deal with them that impacted our entire athletics department. So that's a big win for the institution. I've been trained by my leadership to understand that all the money goes into the same bank account, whether it's coming from volleyball, whether it's coming from esports, whether it's coming from some other account on campus. The money all goes into the same school bank account, and so whatever we do, it can impact the rest of campus. So that's one of the forms of deliverables that we kind of look at. If we want to talk about what we've kind of delivered for a sponsor, we were reached out to by Heartland's McDonald's last year. They were doing a Phase Clan meal around Thanksgiving, I believe. And they wanted to activate within our teams. We were cool with that. That happened. And then we wanted to hop on the phone with them to talk about different ways that we could potentially activate with them. This wasn't us saying, okay, we're going to send them a proposal with our numbers, and then these are how much our numbers are worth, so you should pay us this amount of money. This was, have you guys ever thought about doing a meal deal? Have you guys ever thought about doing this type of deal format to activate within the esports ecosystem? And we settle on the idea of the Maryville meal deal, which is the thing that everybody likes to meme. So on Saturdays, you could order our meal. I believe it was a McDouble. It was 10 nuggets and a large fry. We did that by design. We took the drink out. Most of the other professional sports teams in town, there was a drink in their meal deals. We thought that because we took the drink out, more people would buy it because it's more food for your money, which is a good thing always. And it was just like, let's throw that out there and see what happens. There were no expectations. It wasn't, here's the expectation that we're giving you, McDonald's, and this is how much you should pay us. We didn't ask for any money. It was, we don't know how well this is going to perform, so let's see how it goes. And in the first quarter of the meal, we outsold the St. Louis Cardinals meal deal by multiples, and we're very proud of that. So that's going to be a much more intimate partnership this year. And when you approach these partnerships in a way where you're not coming in immediately with an ask, and it's more like a how can we work together, you're going to end up in a better spot down the road. I think a lot of the professional, big time, non-endemic sponsors that came in to our professional ecosystem, they spent a ton of money very quickly, and a lot of them have been soured on esports. I think in investment communities around the esports community right now, esports is really just a bad word. Like if you're going out to raise money right now, just because of how much our industry has underdelivered. So it's really important that in the collegiate ecosystem, the leaders especially don't go out there and underdeliver on sponsorships, because word travels around these advertisement groups very quickly. So that's something that I very strongly believe in.
No, I think that's actually a very, very strong point, and thank you, Dan, for sharing all the insight there. Um, then I think kind of let's expand it and open this up to the rest of the group then. But is there any other um, let's talk a little bit actually about that in terms of data. How do you present it, right? When you're looking at talking to a potential sponsors and anything like that. Dan, you mentioned, maybe not having the proposal or the pitch, right? The number, and more so looking at working together. But I want to open this up then, Jesse or Caitlin, either of you guys feel free to chime in here. Is there anything that you guys present then in terms of when you guys are looking to talk to partners or brands or sponsors or things like that? What is that initial set of either data, or what is that initial set of documentation potentially look like to you guys when you guys are out there talking to people?
Yeah. I think for us, it's always a blend of strong qualitative and quantitative information and data, from statistics about our program and our program's growth and achievements to trying to highlight success stories of our students, both inside and outside the gaming arena, to industry data that supports the growth of the gaming industry writ large and also of collegiate esports. I think all of that is important to raise up and show in the right proportion. But then alongside the hard numbers, I think crafting really engaging narratives and stories that paint a specific picture of how your partner or sponsors, how their contributions will benefit the students and enhance their experience, how it's going to benefit the school, how it's going to benefit the esports program, but also benefit themselves. And using the data to illustrate that and be specific and help them understand it, super important. I think specifically for us, we've used visual aids like infographics. We've done videos and generic PowerPoints to help convey both sides of the data set, the quantitative and the qualitative. But just making them understand it in whatever way you can, leveraging data, I think is what's important there.
Awesome. Right on. Well, then I think this next question for maybe Caitlin then here, with that in mind, if let's or going back, or let's rewind the clock here, if you're a first year program, right, if you have to start up again, or is there any advice you maybe give to directors or coaches who are in their first year, looking to either add value to their students or just simply to obtain resources? Is there any advice you'd maybe give to somebody who's just kind of starting out, just coming back out the gate?
Sure. I think number one is feedback. Don't be afraid to ask people questions, and specifically your students. Talk to your students, get their feedback. What are some of the things that they want to see? Like, if you were to ask them, hey, what's on your wish list? What would be the ideal esports program for you? Take note of some of those things, because I bet you some of those you can accomplish. But also, speak to the people in your department, and same thing, get their feedback, see what their perspective is, and go from there. I don't necessarily believe in a one size fits all. I think when it comes to sponsorships and partnerships, you got to find what works for you and specifically for your needs. Whenever we evaluate a program partner or program sponsor, it has to be not just aligning with our mission, but also aligning with what we want to accomplish, whether that's creating more scholarships for students, or building more job opportunities for students and coaches, or equipment. There's a lot that goes into it. And so identifying what needs are most critical can help guide some of those conversations and guide your next step forward. With that being said, though, I don't think you have to go for the big sponsor every single time. I think if you find a sponsor that helps with one specific need, pursue that. Because again, at the end of the day, what really matters is how this is going to benefit your students, your program, your department, your school. And I mean, again, every sponsor, every partner is different. What they're looking for in this relationship as well may also be different. And so, yeah, I think some of the best ideas that we've ever had for how we want to build out this program and how we want to do things and how we want to operate come from some pretty unlikely folks across campus who say things like, hey, wouldn't it be kind of cool if we could do this? Or have you considered this? Or why do we do X, Y, and Z? So I think feedback is key to any director who's in their first year, especially if you're stepping into either a new program or a program that's been established.
Right on. No, absolutely. I think hearing from the people themselves, right, or hearing from your constituents, the students. But I think to that point, right, to speaking and hearing from administration, the school, right, all the other stakeholders that might be in the area. But then I think talking to that, right, some of the biggest stakeholders or some of the biggest people who want to see a program succeed and grow are, I think, some of the alumni or non-alumni donors, but people that really just want to see a school succeed. So I think opening this one up as well, or maybe Jesse, you might have some of the insight on this. But is there any advice anyone would give then to looking for alumni or non-alumni donor support or things like that? Is there any specific place any of these directors should start? If they're looking for support from those kind of realms.
Yeah, definitely. So a little bit of context. So, we have two campuses, as I mentioned earlier. We had two primary donors, one for each campus. One was a company sponsor called American Technology Services, whose CEO was a PACE alum. And then the other was an individual whose grandson currently attends PACE and was in our esports program. And both of these arrangements that we ended up securing were totally custom, but centered largely around naming rights for each of our esports centers, respectively. But sort of the linchpin in that process and why it turned out so successfully was that we were fortunate, and I was fortunate enough to work very closely with PACE's, what are they called? The Office of Development and Alumni Relations, I believe. I always get that wrong, but something like that. And collaborating with Gary, who's our VP, who's awesome and an amazing guy and super good at what he does, was instrumental. So for me, in my experience, working with our alumni relations department, which is, that's a department that exists probably, I would imagine, on every university campus everywhere, is completely crucial. I mean, their entire department and their career's worth of expertise is cultivated around exactly what we're talking about today, which is sort of the art of securing partners and sponsors to further uh, the missions of your programs and the mission of the institution. So not working with them conversely is maybe an oversight. So I would definitely start there, and then work with them in a way that makes sense. I think in our instance, I provided a lot of the esports information, and then they helped with a lot of the networking. But we created a compelling narrative. We highlighted how esports isn't just a game, but it's a tool for personal, academic, vocational growth. And that for us, it wasn't just about funds, but rather it was about aligning with sponsors and partners and donors in this case who shared the vision for our program. So definitely 100% reach out to your alumni relations department, as if you're trying to go the donor route. That's where I would start for sure.
Awesome. No, I mean that's really awesome to hear, and I think that hits those, what you would imagine the two kind of perfect scenarios, right? Either they graduated from the school, or they've got a family member attending now, or their son, daughter, grandchild in this case, right, etc. Um, let's move it then, Dan. I'm gonna call on you for this one now, but we've heard, I think, now from right, Caitlin offering advice for people just starting out, Jesse having some great insight here and working with alumni and others. Let's talk now or let's offer some insight then for the season directors, right? Or maybe some of the few. I know it's not a big club, but I know you guys all talk amongst yourselves already. But let's talk a little bit about to that idea of if you're a season program, you're a season director, you've got some accolades under your belt already, right? You've got some accomplishments to the name. Uh, and you're looking for that next step, right? The next tier up, the next jump, or getting into that next category of sponsorship or resource acquisition and whatnot. Is there any advice you'd have, Dan, maybe for then a season program or season director, right? Somebody that exactly that the program already has a name out there to the field.
Yeah, first off, sell where you're at. You have accolades, so sell those. But I would say the most important thing for season programs is you have to sell where you're going. So you have to have a very strong compass of where your program's headed, and you have to be able to articulate that very easily, very quickly, and very effectively. You have to do it in a way where whatever brand you're talking to, they want to be aligned with that. They want to hitch their horse to it. So for us, like, we're not going to be asking for significant cash until our arena is done, and we're talking about naming rights for the entire arena. But if what we can do is in the meantime, we can sell kind of what the goal for the arena is. So the goal for our future arena that we're working on is we want to be the place where in the St. Louis area, if you're a kid growing up and you're getting involved in esports, you're using our facilities, you're in our summer camps, you're working with our coaches, you're working with our students. That's where we want to get to. We also want to get to a point where we can bridge the tech gap in our metro community and in our high school community. We basically want to be the bridge for everything. So if you're a high school teacher right now, you're a volunteer. It's not a mission activity. So you sit after school with 80 kids and you're doing this every day because you recognize your kids are passionate about it, but you're drinking from a fire hose trying to give every student what they want individually. That's impossible for where high schools are at right now. So we do a lot of guest coaching. We want to scale that into our arena. We want to do summer camps, like I said before. Basically, if you have a large scale vision, you're able to build out a 360-degree view of that, put that into a deck. Sponsors will look at that and they'll be like, hey, I want to attach myself using our DEI budget to bridging the tech gap in the metro area. How can we build out an initiative with you guys to do that? That way there's a specific pointed way for them to spend their money with you, and you have kind of a path towards closing that deal. What I see a lot of seasoned programs do is they'll go out and they'll be like, hey, we won the national championship, so that means that should get us some money this year, right? Or it's like, we have this many followers on Twitter, or the one Riot broadcast that we were on that had 40,000 viewers this year means that we should be able to get this sponsorship because our jersey was on that screen for X amount of time. That's not going to work at this level. Like, that's something that the pro side is struggling with, and they get millions and millions of views right now. So you have to think differently. You have to think in an initiative way, and yeah, you have to just make sure that you have a very strong compass, very strong idea of where your program is going, and that's what has to be sold if you have some stuff under your belt.
Oh, I like that. The long-term vision, or getting everybody to the same table, or getting everyone to understand, where you're going, is, I think, a very big thing. I actually want to then open this up, and maybe, Jesse, and we can go to Caitlin. Actually, let's bring you back into the equation here. Would you want to share maybe what you guys are doing at St. Mary's, and kind of in that same vein, what is that vision for you guys, and how is that helping you guys kind of grow your program, grow its resource base, right, and all of that, of what the vision looks like moving forward, or what you guys are planning for down the road?
Sure. For us right now, we're really focusing on and pouring some more resources in is our work opportunities for students and for coaches. So we've been working with our financial aid office to build more jobs for federal work study, so that students who qualify for federal work study can work in esports, specifically on our broadcasts. And then additionally, they can use that experience to work on traditional sports broadcasts right the building over. Another part of that is not just the federal work study piece, but also building out the student worker piece. Finding creative solutions to pay more students for the work that they do, because I believe the work that they do is highly specialized, and it's important that they learn that the things that they do, that time that they spend, has a monetary value. So that's where we're at. Not to say that we're not focusing on competition, because that's where the other part of these jobs comes in, is building out more coaching jobs in our program for coaches who are subject matter experts in one specific thing, whether that be Rocket League or League of Legends or Rainbow Six Siege, but additionally building out roles such as our scouting and recruitment coach. Her entire job is just scouting and recruitment. She's the first person that a lot of our prospects will speak to, and she is the person who does a lot of the evaluating of these prospective athletes. I think that as we build out a lot more of these opportunities for students and for coaches, it will allow us to bring on more students, bring on more student athletes. It'll allow us to be a better resource for the high schools and middle schools, private schools, any kind of scholastic um, anything entity within our city, within our region, because again, I don't think you can pour from an empty cup. So I want to make sure what we can provide is specific to that educator, specific to that group, and that it is a quality resource. And can't do that unless we, have pretty good footing where we're standing now. So that's what our future looks like. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're in it for the long haul.
No, right on. I think we're all here for the long haul, so I agree with you there. And I love, or at least from my side, I love hearing anytime I get to hear about students working on broadcast and media. But that's more, I think, from me, my side, my personal anecdotes. I'm not going to jump too much in because we are still here to talk about sponsorship. But obviously, awesome. Really love hearing about all of that and what you guys are doing there too. Um, Real quick, Jesse, I have the same question to you. More than happy to hear. But while Jesse is talking. If you are in the chat live currently watching this, we do want to open up after this for a little bit of live Q&A. So you guys can, if you guys have a burning question for any of the panelists, feel free to type it into the chat, and we will then try to see if we can bring it in. But while maybe some of those are filtering in, Jesse, if you want to talk anything as well about what Pace is doing, to kind of share that long-term vision, and then how that's helping you then bring in sponsors that maybe are looking to be partnered with some, what any part of that vision, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think ours is actually fairly similar to Dan and to Maryville's in some ways, certainly, which is that the beating heart of esports and gaming in New York City and New York and eventually the entire Eastern region. That's in a nutshell our goals and our vision and our aspirations. And uh, for us, what that looks like specifically is building out esports and gaming in all ways and all angles, pretty much, from finding ways to get in at the middle school and high school level and support the grassroots efforts regionally around us. That's super important, working with nonprofit state organizations like Garden State Esports and others to support the development of high school aspiring esports players. That's a big thing. Then, sort of as Caitlin was touching on, working with the mayor's office and the state to do some cool stuff around vocational opportunities, games industry stuff, driving more games industry business to New York City, and then finding creative and appropriate ways to attach those opportunities to students at Pace and also other collegiate programs in the area. So it's sort of a maximalist, do everything, make it happen. We're fortunate enough to be in a state who, all the way at the top, the mayor, he really wants to support gaming and esports. So having that momentous macroeconomic backdrop is certainly helpful. But yeah, that's sort of our vision, is just be the beating heart of gaming and esports in our area.
Have you made a lot of company connections with your relationship with the mayor?
Beginning
Like,
to
has
more
that
for
resulted
sure.
in? Yeah.
It has definitely. I mean, our connection with them and my connection with them, which is not, it's only 8 months old recently for in a real way, but they've looped us into tons of games mixers, which have hundreds of people from who are like indie game developers to doing this in the industry to doing that in the industry. And I've definitely gotten a lot more connections with folks who are just doing stuff in gaming generally. Maybe not so much esports or scholastic esports specifically, but certainly in the video game industry at large. Yeah.
Sweet.
Awesome. No, yeah, I think I know a lot of people's ears perked up when you said the mayor's thing, Jesse. So good luck. I'm sure people will be DMing you if they didn't know already. Right. So we did end up getting a question in the chat. So I do want to ask this because it does seem very interesting. I'm curious to hear the group's take on this one. But from Diggs Gaming in the chat, it says you're all in seemingly bigger, populous, and business heavier settings, right? So the towns that everybody lives in and whatnot. Do you guys have any recommendations for those in smaller areas to approach sponsors? So floor is open to anybody that would have anything that they want to add to this.
Businesses love bragging about their initiatives, and they love attaching narratives to their initiatives. So you can literally just run with the idea that you're in a small town and that your population isn't normally served in a way that larger populaces would be served. So um, you can actually lean into that. And just because like you don't have companies headquartered around you, you can still reach out to the large national companies, and preferably they're based somewhere in your state. That'll make it a bit easier at least. But like, yeah, I mean, you don't have to posture yourself the same way as Pace is postured. Just lean into what suits you, and you can make it work.
Yeah. I think exactly that, what Dan said. And, going for local businesses, I haven't done this personally, so I can't speak to it in a super concrete way, but I would imagine this is effective. Or I think it would be. But yeah, reaching out to local businesses where a partnership makes sense. Maybe it's just at a slightly smaller scale. I mean, our athletics department, beyond esports, they partner with pizza shops and restaurants and this and that and small local tech companies or whatever to do signage at baseball games. And that sort of low hanging fruit, smaller level sponsorship, I think is pretty common in traditional collegiate athletics. So I think maybe something along those lines could work as well.
You'd be surprised too. Like usually the local sponsors are much easier to get cash out of than the large national ones.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
so the turnaround, not only is like the turnaround time shorter, but usually you'll get higher levels of cash, especially early on in a program. Um, I'm not talking about like six-figure deals. I'm saying things that'll have a lot of impact for you when you're starting out. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I know we are coming up a little bit on time here, so I do want to also then open back up the floor to you guys. Any final thoughts, any final words you guys would want to say? And really, it can be directed to anybody in the community, right, at any level, but really just wanted to give you guys the floor, each of you a few minutes to just kind of say anything that might be on your heart of like, hey, if you were somebody watching this stream and, wherever you were in your career, is there some piece of advice that you wish somebody told you? Or is there something you'd want to share with somebody now who might be watching or who might watch this down the road? And let's go reverse order. So let's start with Caitlin.
Yeah. I think one piece of advice that I would give to my past self, or I don't know, maybe even my future self, is lean on the feedback. Lean on the feedback. It may not always be what you want to hear, but sometimes there's some truth there. And talk to people. Talk to people, invite them in. You never know what kind of creative ideas and solutions you may come across. And I mean that. Talk to professors, talk to administration, talk to the part-time folks downstairs, talk to anyone and everybody, get their take. Because I know for sure I can't do it all alone, and I'm not going to come up with the best ideas and solutions by myself. So leaning on leaning on my network, leaning on my resources on campus, building those relationships across campus. Maybe someone doesn't have the idea or the solution to what I'm trying to figure out today, but maybe they do tomorrow.
Oh, right on. Love hearing from others. Love the feedback idea. Jesse?
Yeah. And seconded Caitlin, I think soliciting feedback as much as possible is always a good decision for sure. I'll give a piece of advice, I guess, as it relates to the partnership and sponsorship and donor thing, which is if you're in a director position or thinking about it or in an adjacent position and you're at an institution and you're squaring up to these sorts of questions and challenges and need to drive revenue in some form for your program, I think it is a mistake to not reach out to your alumni relations department and engage in conversation with them immediately. I mean, that's hands down been the most valuable thing for me in our success. And they're really good at what they do. And I don't claim to know how to do the stuff super well at all. So lean on them as much as you possibly can, and it will likely go well.
For
I
me,
love.
oh sorry.
No, go ahead. You're good, Dan. Go for it. Yeah, I go for it.
Yeah. For me, I would say, um, don't be. You need to figure out exactly what you want. This is for directors just starting out. You need to figure out exactly what you want, what you think you need to do your job, and don't be afraid to ask for all of it. I hear it so many times. People are afraid to ask for things. They're like, "Oh, I just got in to this job. I don't want to ask for too much. I don't want to try to stir the pot too much." No, you need to go in and you need to ask for everything that you need up front. Is your leadership supposed to arm you with the tools you need to do your job when you aren't even communicating all of it to them? So I would say the most impactful thing for me throughout my career in Scholastic was the realization that I should never be holding back when I'm talking to my superiors, and you need to just be very blunt. Your superiors will actually appreciate this from you. It's something that a lot of people in higher ed and many departments kind of pedal around. If you get straight to the point with exactly what you're looking for, a lot of times you'll be surprised that you'll get it more often than not.
Yeah.
And also, good luck to Jesse's Valorant team when we play them this year. I'm excited.
I also sort of wish you the best of luck, Dan. Except sort of that.
No, yeah, no. I think good luck to a lot of people that are gonna have to play your team this year, Dan. You guys are gunning for
That's a
that.
true statement.
Well, all right. With that said, for those of you, I know there was a few questions that came in very late. But what I think we are going to do is that there will be a short panel later on for the panelists who are able to join it at 5 p.m. Eastern. So in about another hour and 15 minutes. If any of you still have any questions, or you'd like to talk with these guys, or you want to ask their questions, or maybe just spark conversation yourself, that is something that for those that are able to make it, they will be in our Discord, the EsportsU Discord. So that's discord.gg/esportsu. So feel free to join it there. But I just want to say thank you from me and from the rest of the team here at EsportsU. Thank you to all of you guys for being on this panel with me or with us today. I think you've all shared some great insights and some great information. So thank you all very, very much for being here. And we look forward to potentially seeing you guys and furthering this discussion in the Discord later on today. But with that said, that will close out our sponsorships panel. Coming up next will be the Commissioners Roundtable, which will be moderated by our very own Angela Bernard Thomas, and then various commissioners from various different conferences and leagues, and some new faces this year. So stick around. You guys don't want to miss that. That's coming up in about 15 minutes. But thank you guys for joining me, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Angela Bernhard Thomas. I am the Chief Esports Officer at Collegiate Sports Management Group and EsportsU. Very excited to welcome this panel today here for the Commissioners Roundtable. Very privileged and honored to have you all here today. I think what we're seeing here is the OGs of college esports. So very much excited to hear all the different perspectives from the commissioners that we have on this panel today that have really built this space. So with that, let's get started with introductions. Take about 30 seconds. Let the audience know who you are and what conference you represent. And Carol Ann, we'll start with you.
Sure, and hello everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Carolyn Henry. I am the Senior Associate Commissioner here at the Mountain West Conference. We're a traditional athletics conference, but we also have esports, and we're going into our 6th year of esports. So we're very excited about the upcoming season, and again, just really happy to be here.
Thank you. Dan?
Sure. Yeah. Dan Coonan, Commissioner of the ECAC, took this job 8 years ago. We had 250 traditional sport colleges, D1, 2, and 3. We decided then to jump into esports as it was just getting rolling. Emailed all 250 ADs and said who'd be interested if we jumped into esports. And then a couple of days, I had 24 responses saying yes, and we've just grown from then. Now we've got 11,000 competitors nationwide playing 17 games. So it's been pretty cool. So we're thrilled with the way it's gone, and appreciate Angela, you guys in CSMG, and everything you guys have done to help us.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Michael?
Sure. I think I might be the one that's a little different. I don't have a commissioner in my title because my role is a little bit different. Maybe a lot different, actually. But I'm Michael Brooks. I'm the executive director for the National Association of Collegiate Esports. It's the largest varsity esports organization association in North America. And we have 215 varsity esport programs, institutions as member institutions, but we also run NACE Star League, which is the largest collegiate esports competition in North America, with last count was 700, and I checked it this morning. It was 776 colleges and universities of all makes, sizes, and types.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. Bob?
Yeah, hi, folks. Bob Drenoff, Commissioner of the East Coast Conference. Like Carolyn, we're a traditional NCAA conference. We're NCAA Division II. I'm starting my 16th year as Commissioner of the conference. We'll be starting our 5th year with esports this fall. And we're a lot smaller than Dan and Michael's organizations. We have about 14 schools that'll play with us this year. Excited to be part of this. Thank you, Angela.
Great. Small but mighty, Bob. Small but mighty. But yes, thank you all for being here. So we'll just get started. Dan, I'd like to start with you. And I've got a list of questions here that we're going to run through that the team has put together. And so the ECAC has operated in this space for so many years now. As you have seen booms in leagues and tournaments, what has been the one thing that you have identified that a league or a conference requires to sustain itself for this long?
Well, I'll answer it for us. There's a variety of folks on the call here, and I think we've all got a niche and have found what works for us. And in our case, I think to be sustainable from the start, we realized that we wanted to have a diversity of games, and that if we got married to one or two games, people's interests and can be fleeting, and there can be a lot of change across this. And we thought, if we have a lot of games we'll be able to sustain ourselves through some of the ebb and flow of people's taste. And so we have 17 titles, and it's great to have competition across all 17 of those titles. So I think that would be the first thing, just having a diversity of games, so a school can join us and get involved in all of what we've got to offer. Secondly, I think just listening to our members, and specifically listening to the competitors, as well as the coaches. There has been a lot of change. I mean, 7 years ago, we had a vision, but we knew this thing was going to be a little crazy, and we knew enough to know that we didn't know how it was going to be, and so we just wanted to kind of build a beast and then listen to our competitors and listen to our member schools, and fill their needs and provide value for them in the way that they want us to. And so I think the combination of those two things has really been essential for us in our sustainability, and it continues to drive our success, I think.
That's great, Dan. Thank you so much. Question for Michael next. Michael, everyone knows about the partnership with Playfly and NACE Star League. Can you share with viewers who may not be aware, how do NACE and Playfly combine their forces to deliver the NACE Star League? Or a little bit
A
about
lot
how
of
that came about even. Yeah, it's an
Sure,
interesting story.
yeah. I appreciate you bringing that up. So it really came down to right time, right place, and a marriage of goals. Back when was this, like 2 years ago now, when we were talking to Playfly, and we talked to every group pretty much in the collegiate esports space, some more than others just from the nature of our work. But what we identified pretty quickly is we had two different organizations dealing with two different populations within collegiate esports. NACE has always been focused on varsity official esport programs at our member institutions. Playfly Esports at that point in time, they were called Collegiate Star League, so they had a name change a little later on. But Collegiate Star League was historically known for club esports, right? These are not typically the official programs of these colleges and universities. These are student clubs organizing themselves and competing from their institutions, not necessarily on behalf of, but from those institutions. And we realized pretty quickly there's a lot of similarity in the work that we're doing, right? We're still putting on competition. We're still negotiating with publishers. We're still broadcasting. We're still putting together our own national championships or in-person grand finals. A lot of duplicate efforts, right, to accomplish the same thing. And then we looked at our strengths and weaknesses, and we saw that there was kind of a divergence there where what Playfly was really focused on was, how do we make this commercially viable and a sustainable business model to grow in the future? And on our part, that was never in our wheelhouse or really an objective we're looking at. Like, sustainability is important, don't get me wrong. We were obviously very focused on that as well, but we're really focused on the level setting of the space, right? How do we put down the infrastructure, the concrete, the foundation, the building blocks to make sure that this can grow in a reasonable way that fits within the collegiate ecosystem, right? And predominantly because we are a member association, to make sure that the schools have the dominant voice, or if not the dominant, close to voice at the table when discussing, what esports looks like as it moves forward. And from that, we saw that, okay, well, it seems that we have married interests, right? Where one is weaker, the other one stronger. We have these two different populations, which are both critical for the ecosystem that we have. If we brought together our efforts, could we do this better than each group individually can do? Is the sum now greater than its parts? And the answer, I think, over 2 years has been absolutely yes, right? It's been a resounding success. It's been growing by leaps and bounds. Every year is a monstrous amount of growth. We're officially licensed by every single publisher. We're the official leagues for a lot of our publisher partners. Tencent was the most recent one that we were running PUBG Mobile events. I think last weekend was our second iteration of that, and it's growing nonstop. But it's really representative of organic grassroots growth, but now with some strategic plans in place over that guiding that growth. So that's historically how it came to BART, right? It came to being was just matching those interests. A lot of trust was involved, trust and verification, I think, amongst both parties, and I think we've gotten past that. But our teams work effectively as one across really any other department you can think of, and it continues the theme. I've been published on this many times, right? I think collegiate esports, it has to consolidate sooner rather than later for the space. That doesn't mean you can't have your own thing. That doesn't mean you can't have your own conference or region or standalone event. I think that's wonderful. More power to you. But just wondering how that fits within the whole ecosystem cohesively, that's always been my objective. And we've been seeing that, right? Like this year, I think NA Star League, we've been approached by most collegiate organizations on how do they join NA Star League, right? How do they merge with us, right? What does that even look like? And I think that speaks to the ground shifting a little bit to where Dan mentioned earlier, right? Providing member value. How do we support our schools? How do we support our students in a way that's sustainable, that grows and continues to provide value year over year? That's always been our focus, and I think we're now starting to see other people recognize that, yeah, simply put, in most cases, you can do more together.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you for that. And I didn't get to attend this year, but I heard a lot of great reports from friends that were at your big summit this year, saying how successful it was and how collaborative it felt. So congratulations on that. Okay,
I
let's
appreciate
move.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, let's move to Carol Ann next. So, Carol Ann, in contrast, Mountain West, and Bob, this is going to be directed to you as well. Both Mountain West and ECC are both more regional conferences. Can you tell us a little bit about, how you serve your markets and what are the big advantages of a regional conference for these schools?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the advantages of being regional, one, we have like institutions that are members of our conference. They're all also members of our athletic conference, and they compete against one another in traditional athletics as well as in esports. And so there's already rivalries that have developed, and that's one of the biggest things. You might have rivalries on the football field, and now we have rivalries in esports amongst our conference members. In the West, it's a lot of opportunity to compete against the schools on the West Coast, the schools in the Mountain West, and just the schools in the Western region. But primarily, the biggest thing is we have 12 Mountain West institutions who compete against each other, and they're bound not just by traditional athletics, but they're bound by esports, and there are certain academic programs that are alike. So it's something to be said to just have your group that you compete against and have the opportunity to qualify in many instances for competition nationally.
Yes, great. We've had Mountain West teams at CECC and NACE. We all have a lot of familiar names that we're all working with. Bob, how about you? What would you like to add about regional conferences?
Yeah, in a similar vein, I think most of our schools are also participating in both NACE and the ECAC, and other organizations, and we don't have any kind of limitations on our schools. Right. We think more participation it could be valuable, and it's up to those schools to direct their own programs. I think what we did from the start was organize our esports league. We started with one game, and we're up to 6 now. But we started our esports with the intent that we would, similar to what Carolyn was saying, that we would run it similar to all our other sports. So we have, these are win are getting the same kind of shirts, get the same kind of awards. We have honors at the end of each season. So I think one of the positives that we've found is that with a smaller league, there's more opportunity for recognition at times. Some local rivalries or regional rivalries have been created. I think the teams that win our conference are proud of being East Coast Conference champs and being recognized for that. And so that's kind of the niche that we've created, and we try to sell when schools contact us about joining us.
Thank you, Bob. I'll kind of throw this out for everyone. What are some of the assumptions about leagues and conferences that players or schools seem to have that you would like to shed some light on or clarify? Like, what are some of the main services that a conference or a league can provide? And how is it specifically different from traditional sports to esports? Does anybody
Well,
want to touch on that?
sure. If I could to start, and Bob just hit on it. I think I think when we all got started with this, several years ago, there was a little bit of some organizations were introducing exclusivity. You be with us, and all your esports comes here, and you can't be involved with anyone else. And we've touched on it already here. So many of our schools are involved with Michael and Carolyn and Robert, and it's kind of interesting that way. And I like that fact. They're finding what they need, and there's not this territorial part of it. And I don't know that everybody fully is aware of that, because we do these calls every week. We have several calls with new schools that are interested, and many of them, that's news to them. But I think it's a cool aspect of what's going on in intercollegiate esports.
Yeah, I think
I'll
agree
please.
with Dan and similar to Bob. One of the things that people don't realize, at least from our conference perspective, is we run esports like we run any other championship. It's a competition. And so you have championship trophies, you have championship t-shirts and hats and so on, just like any other championship. In addition, we also make sure that our student athletes who are participating are eligible to participate. And that's something that we did from the outset. And it wasn't necessarily, across the board, at least from what I understand nationally. So those are a couple of things that we do like traditional athletics, but I think a misconception is that esports is kind of out here on its own. And it really isn't. It's a competition. It might be different than what folks are accustomed to, but it's still a competition, and our schools and our institutions, our kids are really proud to represent their institutions and their conference.
Michael? Thank you, Carol.
Yeah, I'll add here. So Dan's right on the nose, right? There is so much intermingling of the institutions that are participating in each of our groups, the students, in fact, as well. An idea that's out there, which it's not, they never asked me, but who are your competitors? I'm like, I don't know. Haven't met a true competitor yet. Most groups we work with, we organize schedules with. It is not that there aren't, at least amongst the organizations here, there's not walls keeping anyone in or out for the most part, other than fitting with the existing schools in that space. So I think that's one typical misconception is, one wins if the other one loses. That's not necessarily the case. And esports is so young right now. If someone comes in with that mindset, they're gonna do more damage than good for the long run. And you're right. Yeah. I've always hated this phrase, and I did my best to kill it, and I lost. But the phrase, esports is the wild Wild West, right? I've hated that. The entire reason for NACE's existence is because the schools that had invested in the space realized, no, that's a terrible space to invest and build in. That's a terrible space to put your students in. We need to organize, and that's why those schools formed this association. The conferences being involved here on this call, especially, right, came in with that same mentality, right? We're not going to treat this any different. We're going to hold it to the same expectations. any one of our other sports would be under. And so I've always been a big proponent of, the Wild Wild West is dead. That may be on the periphery, but at least within our ecosystem, the space that we've built, it is treated exactly like you would for any other sports. Now, the rules might be a little bit different, the standards might be a little bit different, but the standards are there and the enforcement is there. We verify every single student who competes at any one of our schools. We check their academics every single semester. These are things that our schools came in expecting and demanding, and because we answered to the needs of our schools, that's something that we executed on years ago, and we still do to this day. But that story is common across everyone on this call. Like, there's not any difference there. So I just kind of want to put to rest this whole idea of the Wild Wild West still being predominant in this space. Maybe back in 2016, but it's been a while since then.
I will say though, Angela, that I think to some degree, this is still a bit of a confusing landscape for people that come out of the traditional sports arena, understanding how a team that plays in my league might also be in Dan's league and involved in NACE competitions also. And so I get a little surprised that when I do hear from schools that are saying, well, we're thinking about starting a program, because I just assume that most schools have talked about this for years already. The explanation sometimes to folks that have just really a background in traditional sports, not esports, isn't always the easiest to have. The other part that I would say is that what we like to tell schools too at our league is that, again, we encourage participation. I think it's great. If schools have the resources to do it and enough bodies to do it, it's great. We say to people, listen, that means there's more opportunity for people at your school to join and participate. And maybe there's a team in the ECAC and another team in the ECC that are both playing the same game. And so that, to me, this is a real this esports is the opportunity is significant, I think, for schools for the reasons that schools are adding it, participation and enrollment and attention and all those kind of things.
Bob, that's a great
Bob,
point. Yeah. Go ahead, Dan.
I'd just add that conferences and alignment in the area of traditional sports is getting increasingly confusing as each week goes by the way.
True. Good point. Yeah, good point.
Yes, as Carol Ann knows that very well right now. But I wanted to touch on that just briefly. Like you said, Bob, it is very different and sometimes hard to understand the differences. But number one, how do you all feel about multiple rosters for different game titles? We encountered that this year where some schools would be sending multiple rosters to compete in our events. And do you see that as a trend that's going to grow? And also, what has your feedback been from your schools on esports and gaming in general as a recruiting tool for new students on campus? So we'll start with you, Michael.
So we addressed the issue about having multiple rosters in the same esport from the same institution a couple years ago. The way we did that was by establishing a divisional structure. So first off, we separated varsity programs on one side and clubs on the other, creating two divisions for each. We have Varsity Plus, we have Varsity Premier, we have Open Plus, we have Open Premier, and that's diverging clubs and varsity programs. Secondly, we developed Varsity Premier to be the traditional one team per esport per institution, right? That is what we call our premier level, our top level of competition is Varsity Premier. And so in that one, that division, you can only have one team representing a school in a singular esport. We don't allow for multiple rosters from the same institution competing there. In Varsity Plus, however, we took a very different approach, and we do allow multiple rosters from the same institution in the same esport. But what we do is, because we're basically creating this conference infrastructure that consists of our regular season. And we make sure, because we are power ranking schools to create a solid competitive experience, that the same roster or the roster from the same school, like they're not going to be in the same conference. So we're splitting them apart that way as well. And you can see that mirrored on the open side as well. So we went in intentionally and made sure that everyone's rosters are going to be split up, depending if it's Premier or Plus. They're going to be split up by their proficiency in the game, their ranks, or the performances in past seasons. And then we're going to also make sure that there is good diversity and that there's no instance like in the old days of collegiate esports or esports generally speaking, where in a match you'll have a school play their other team, right? Like that doesn't
Yeah.
happen in Nate Starling and hasn't happened for years. So that is how we took that approach. To answer the other part of your question, we understand that many institutions who have varsity esport programs, they started these programs first and foremost as a student retention and recruitment tool. So they are incentivized. Their goals are to create as big of rosters as possible because they want as many students involved as possible. But because the rosters for each individual esport are quite small, I'll pick on Rocket League and our friends over at Psyonix and Epic real quickly. But that's a roster size of 3, right? Maybe you have you probably do have an alternative, so 4 students in total. It's not unusual at all for a college or university to have 3, 4 different Rocket League teams because they're trying to hit those larger student numbers. And so they're creating a team A, team B, team C, team D. And that is why amongst many of the groups here, we see the same institution competing in, any combination of the esport orgs that are out there. But they're trying to find homes for all these teams. So all their students are active and they can continue to grow these programs. But so long as that goal is in there, the schools are incentivized to try to make these programs as big as possible, with any resource limitations that they may have constraining that. And we want to help support that, right? We're going to match the needs of our institutions. If we're being told that's critically important, we're going to build things to enable that. But at the end of the day, we're going to default to it always comes down to what the school wants to do. If they want to create a full academic year of competition, they can do that. That's why we created the semester model, where they would just sign up in both semesters and they now have a full academic year of competition, perhaps even for the same students. Or if they want to create an on-season and off-season dynamic, they can do that by just simply choosing the semester they'd like to compete. So it really, for us, it came down to building it correctly to enable schools to have choice.
Great.
I think I got all your questions. I'm sorry if I missed something there.
Anybody else? Dan, did you?
Yeah. So we did a little bit differently. From the very start, we allowed schools to have as many teams per game as they wanted per title, and we have like Nancy, we now have divisional structure where we have as many as 3 different divisions based upon competitive level. But even within that, if you have 2 or 3 teams that are good enough to play in the top tier division, you can play all 3 of them, and it's just a difference in philosophy and that we've gone with, and I think it enables schools to have bigger rosters, perhaps, and so I think that leads us. We have, I think, 60 plus people or competitors per school of our member schools, and I think that's the reason why. But it's just a different approach. As to your second question, absolutely, schools are. I think that maybe some of them went into esports years ago thinking and buying off on there's going to be huge sponsorship money and all that, and while they may have been a little disappointed there that it takes a lot of effort to generate revenue. However, the enrollment part, absolutely, they have found that there's an enrollment relationship, and many of the schools that went in to boost their enrollment are finding that they have, and then they're doubling down on it really in terms of starting academic programming and even in many instances majors related to esports. And so I think they're having a lot of success of realizing a lot of success in those ways, in addition to all the competitive benefits and that you get with fielding intercollegiate teams of any kind. So I think they're very satisfied with the impact that it's having on enrollment.
I think the better programs do a better job recruiting. Are committed to actively recruiting and not, not putting up flyers on bulletin boards and hoping they're going to be able to field a team, by kids that are just walking past that, the cafeteria. And so the programs that spend more time, and have brought in people as leaders on their teams to work to identify potential students will do better.
Yeah, I think one of the things from our perspective is that we have support from the top, so from our board of directors, and so that trickles down to our programs, and it certainly does help, as Dan mentioned, the recruiting aspect for the institution overall. And so that's been a big point of emphasis for our schools. As it relates to your roster question, historically, we've allowed one roster per institution per game. However, during COVID, when we were trying to keep all of our students connected, we allowed multiple rosters per game. And we did what we called a quarantine series because we felt like our students were not connecting to one another because no one was on campus. And I don't know, I think we ran it about 6 or 8 weeks in that spring of 2020. And that was the only time that we did. But the understanding is you have one roster per game per school for the Mountain West.
Thank you all. That's all very, very interesting. So we're going to see more game titles, more rosters, more teams joining different conferences. It's quite an interesting space we're looking at here. So let's start wrapping up just a little bit, but I'd like to go to each of you. Michael, we'll start with you. What are you most excited about this upcoming season with NACE? Do you have any news or exciting something new you're doing in the conference that you'd like to share?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, my title's a little bit different because my work is a little bit different. But and we've got some announcements coming out, but we have athletic conferences fully joining NACE, and we'll be competing as conferences under NACE Star League, the Star League's banner. And that's our evolutionary growth, right? Like I mentioned earlier, consolidation, bringing the space together, aligning interests, and leveraging resources to create a bigger win for everyone involved. This is the next evolutionary step. Whether it's a small step or large step, the time will tell. But we're excited to start actually onboarding full athletic conferences who will be competing as athletic conferences, but with the support and resources of the association behind it. So that's probably the biggest one. Or I literally was editing the announcement today, which is funny because my edits will always get edited by actual communications and marketing folk. So that's coming out here fairly soon. It should have been out earlier if we had managed to get everything squared away. But that's probably the biggest and most exciting thing that we're looking at here in the short term in terms of big news coming out from the association. As always, we're looking forward to reopening NACE Star League's advertising network once more. We were the first organization to actually start developing one centralized but nationally distributed advertising network on behalf of our schools. It's all opt-in, so schools choose to participate or they choose not to. But those who choose to participate, we're writing them checks. We're sending them revenue that's separate from the normal revenue streams that colleges and universities typically have available to them within the esports space. And it's doing well. Like last year, I think our mark was $2,500, which is strangely enough, like it just worked out math-wise to our membership dues every year. So the schools that participated, which we're essentially controlling and running for them, they're competing absolutely for free within NACE. Like it's all everything's just a net win for them at that point, and we're looking forward to expanding that as well.
That's wonderful. Dan, what are you looking forward to
Yeah.
this season?
I think years ago, when we started this, we thought that the in-person events would be much bigger than what they ended up being, and it ended up that the online aspect became much bigger, and especially during COVID. No, we did our GamerCon in Albany
Mhm.
every year, but now we're getting much more involved in this ECAC campus series invitationals, where we're doing a lot more going out to campuses and having campuses host a collection of schools, and it's been a pretty cool thing for us. And now that we're national, we're doing it in different segments of the country, and we're looking forward to those events this year as well.
I love that, Dan, and I've got to go to several gamer cons myself. And have been really, really impressed at the number of crowds that you draw for
Mhm.
that and the high level of production. Really, really great event. And I like that model that you're doing across the country. I think a lot of schools want that. Carol Ann, what are you excited about this season?
One, the upcoming season, it feels more normal than the last several have felt. But we've had some preliminary discussions about another institution joining the Mountain West Esports team. So once we get down the line, hopefully we'll have an announcement of who else will be joining us to play the games that we play. So excited about that as well as the upcoming season.
Great. Congratulations, Carol Ann. Bob, how about you? What are you looking forward to?
For the last couple of years, we've been partnering with EsportsU to produce and stream our championship events, and we're expanding, as you know, Angela. We're expanding that relationship for the coming year, where EsportsU will also be helping us manage our league. And the reality for being a small conference running esports is that we want to do a better job. We want to have better services for the teams and the students that participate, and be more organized and really give them a good experience. And so we're excited about formally joining with EsportsU for this coming year to help us provide all those services. So I think it's going to be a major step forward for us.
Congrats.
We're excited about that too, Bob. And I know they've already had a lot of calls with your schools, and we're working on high end graphics for you and super excited. We also do a lot of Dan's broadcasts. We do all of Dan's broadcasts. Carol Ann, we do some of yours too. So we're excited too about kicking off this season. I mean, we are just so happy to be part of this community and part of growing this space right now, which I feel is really in a more solid shape than pro esports are, or even amateur esports are right now, and due to the importance of esports and gaming across education and the impact that can make on the future workforce and leaders of tomorrow. So really privileged to be able to work in this space and know all of you. And I look forward to us all growing together and deepening our relationships this year. So let's close with one word from each of you. If you were to identify the most important metric to grow college esports, what would that word be over the next, several years coming up? We'll start with you, Michael. I know what your word's going to be.
Oh, I got plenty of words. You're making me pick one KPI? Oh my gosh.
Right.
If we're talking about student success, I'm gonna give you a curveball. How about that one? Because I think I know you
Okay.
know what my answer would have been. I'm gonna
Yeah.
give you a curveball. I think graduation rates and employment rates within 6 months of graduation. I think that's gonna become critically important for all of us to pay very close attention to.
Wow. Love that. Okay. Great. Dan?
Well, it's hard to argue with that, by the way. I think uh, I the roster size per school, uh, I think is an important metric to see how engaged a school is and how a school is doing with their esports program, and so that's something we look at. It's why we want to, we've added our 17th title now, and that's always been very important to us.
Yeah, the diversity of the game, so important. Carol Ann?
I would say the diversity of the teams. The more people that we can attract to play
Okay.
video games, to play at our schools, the more we're going to expand our teams. We know that, a lot of people play before they get to college, but women, for example, don't necessarily get on college esport teams. I would like to see more diversity, across our team rosters, and hopefully get more people who can play and feel comfortable in the space.
That's great. That's esports is a great equalizer,
Mhm.
everybody. So I love that. Bob, how about you? What's
Yeah,
your one
once
magic?
again, I'm in line with a lot of the stuff that Carolyn says. I think that one of the big things, and maybe this, I'm not sure this is what you're looking for, but I think what's really important for college programs is to start building relationships in their communities,
Hmm.
with high schools and youth
Yeah.
programs, and that's something we've tried to do within our conference with some partnerships we have in the New York
Hmm.
metro area. I think that's going to be really valuable because it's going to lead to all the stuff that Dan talks about expanding programs. Same thing with Michael, that's going to move to students paying more attention to their academic and career goals coming out of these college programs. But the high school programs are growing quickly, and same thing with youth and community programs too. And so I think colleges have the ability to build those relationships that will help those programs grow, but also um, uh, start
Hmm.
building potential, student bases for their both academic and esports programs.
Agreed so much, Bob. And the panel right before this one was on selling local sponsorships for
Okay.
your esports program. So again, connecting with industry and businesses in your local community. There's a lot of schools that are getting local sponsorships for their esports teams. So if any of you want to go back and watch the panel that was before, we had some schools on there talking about how they're fundraising and getting scholarship support for their esports programs. So I don't see on here that there's any chat. I don't know if I was supposed to see chat or not, but anyway, I want to thank you all for joining us here today and sharing these insights. It's been very valuable for myself, and I know all the viewers watching. Again, just a pleasure to know you all and get to work with you all. There is a Discord session that starts in 15 minutes on the EsportsU Discord. So, Bob or Dan, Michael, Carolyn, if you have time to jump into that Discord, and it's an opportunity for our community to be able to connect with you directly and ask questions there. So, I'm sure Kyler will send you that information and how to get involved in that. But again, a big thank you to all of you. And I look forward to seeing you in person this year. So good luck
Agreed.
to everyone in your programs. And if we can be of service or just supporting you in any kind of way, please let us know.
Thank
Well,
you.
thanks for all you're
Thank
doing,
you.
Angela. It's great working with you.
Great job.
Thank you all as
Thank you.
well. All
All right,
righty.
good seeing you guys. Yep.
You too.